Yep. All right, let's get the road on show. September 2025 Recruitment Roundtable. All right, good day, everyone, and thank you for joining the call. I expect that in the next 1.5 hours, we will be having a great time. This is something that we do to give back to ourselves, to give back to the Recruiters Hub. Um, and for me, I learn as much because I've come to realize that recruitment is as best as it practices within your industry or region. There are certain nuances that we probably might never touch that others might be doing. And for me, it's always in the power of the community. Okay, so let's look at the last time we had this conversation, we were talking about we had some conversations around the state of hiring, certain predictions as far back as 2024 and where we are today. So I'll go around again. We just go touch on everyone. Since the last time we met, right? I think that was in April, or you could say from January up until today. This is the ninth month. This is the month of September. How has the state of hiring been? Right. So let me start from Sophie. Sophie,
hmm
how's the state of hiring been from where you stand and what you've seen? Looking back at the predictions from 2024 or some things you probably see in the first quarter and now, what are those things that have changed? Let's hear from you.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's interesting. So full transparency, I did a slight pivot out of recruiting ever so recently. But the truth is recruitment would always still have my heart and my soul, regardless of where I go. But at least early this year into middle of this year, I had still been very active in the recruiting space and a few things that I had observed. I will pick on one, the biggest one, which is the adoption of AI, which we all know. To a very great degree, we had seen, okay, am I back? Because I know I tripped up for a bit. Yeah, okay, great. So we had seen lots and lots of companies from last year making predictions, even thought leaders in the HR and recruiting space making heavy predictions around the adoption of AI, and then AI literally replacing the majority or more than half of the process within the recruiting cycle. One thing that I had now seen towards the half of this year, even up until now, is the slight nosedive in the true adoption of AI. And that's because I think a lot of us thought that from a generative AI standpoint, we're going to be heavily reliant on AI. AI would source the right candidates, would screen, etc. But now we are slowly realizing that even as much as AI can do that, we still need the human oversight in this because AI has even started to give us that very, very strong notion that there can be flaws. I can give you a classic example. One of the applicant tracking systems that I used to use, ATS, it would help you to scan or to grade candidates in line with how fit they are for the role. So it will give you a percentage marking, and it will also tell you why this candidate's profile is a fit for the role. I mean, that made my job easier. So if you score above 80% on your profile, I would just run with that candidate's profile. But on the second look, when I do the shortlisting and I start to read through the profiles of what the AI had shortlisted for me, I realized that some of them were extremely off tangent, extremely off tangent. I'm hiring let's say a backend developer, and then I'm seeing that you graded a mathematics teacher who has never coded in his life or her life at 95%. So I'm asking myself, upon what parameters did this AI tool grade this profile on? And that's where you start to see the importance of the human intervention or the human involvement in AI practices. So one very major takeaway for me this year would be, as much as no everybody's screaming about AI adoption, and we know it's very important for our end-to-end process within recruiting and talent operations, it's also very important for us to never renegade the place of humans, in overseeing these functions. Also, to also add, before I quickly wrap this up, we are seeing companies like IBM, Salesforce, etc., literally like laying off quite a huge number of their staff because they wanted to replace with AI. And just after a couple of months, we're hearing that they are recalling them back. What does that tell you? As much as AI is great, we still need humans to run this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sophie, for that. I saw Ademika laughing when you mentioned that, the AI. graded at 95% a mathematics teacher. That's just a very wonderful case study or use case. Akon-te, let's hear from you. State of hiring, same flow. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Am I audible? Just checking. All right, cool. I think I'll just maybe stay in line with Sophie's thoughts around it, because I think there was a program, like an event that we went to sometime, was it this year? I think Sophie was at that event, and I think she was one of the panelists. And I'll just narrow this to the question, and the conversation was around AI in recruiting and all of this other stuff, right? And I remember at that event had given a sort of like a scenario where, as much as AI, we all like to scream AI, maybe Tolu, you can keep me honest. I've always been this sort of a pessimist about it, because I'm more of a realist, right? As much as I understand that AI can help simplify a lot of things, but you cannot take away the human feel in recruiting. And that is what I've always clamored for. I use today where I work, we use Zoho ATS, right? And Zoho ATS, the version that we use has, an AI, embedded in it. It's called Zia. And with Zia, you can pretty much, sieve through hundreds, thousands of CVs, and it kind of does the ranking, right? And with that, you can easily just pull out the ones that you feel best based on the ranking that also Sophie referenced. But what I noticed quickly when I joined was that a lot of times you would find that it is the least qualified ones that are getting ranked at the top. And also what I also found very quickly is the fact that most times the ones who are not even ranked at all, who are the lower end of the pile, are the most qualified. And I gave an example at that event where I said that there was this time I was hiring, and some people do not have the and the best guys most of the time in that space. Some engineers, or most of the good engineers, don't have much written on their CVs, right? They have very few stuff. And in this case I was referencing at that event was the fact that this particular candidate didn't have anything, just job title, company, job title, company. No responsibilities, no duties, no key achievement, nothing. Just title, responsibilities, titles, company, title, company. And that was the way the CV was. Now, guess what? The ATS had ranked that candidate at the lower end of the pile. Lower, like this candidate there was never any AI that would rank him even in the middle. So that meant that this candidate would go unnoticed. But what I did find was, as I was looking through, after I did the first search with the AI tool, and I noticed that most of the guys were not even qualified, I just started to look, myself, just to see. And of course, certain companies where if a person works in a certain company, this person has to be good, right? I don't want to name names, just not to give them publicity. There's certain companies that when you look at candidates, there's no way you can make it into this place. Think about not even the big four now. Think about the other, managing consulting company. Okay, I can name them. Bain & Co., McKinsey. There's no way you cannot be good and work there. So when you find people working in that space, even when you don't have as much written on their CVs, you would know this person has to be solid, right? Essential and all the likes. Now, this is just an example, not to say, the candidate was from those companies. I just pull out this CV, put a call through, and I just had a conversation. And guess what? This guy it ticked even more than the boxes that I needed to be ticked. What am I saying? I'll try not to bore us with all the details. What am I saying in essence is the fact that as much as we like to scream AI in this part of the world, and most of the time what I've found is that it's just trying to join the bandwagon. You see Americans saying AI, Nigerians too want to AI, you're going to management, let's approve this, we want to do AI agent, we want to build a tool. It's all just to, for lack of a better sentence, feel among, even when you're not ready. And I remember at the last call we had, this very call we had the last time, I did mention that a lot of times we're not even there yet. We've not, there are certain, there are blocks that have to be laid before you can even talk about having AI. Is it some companies that are not even, they don't have ATS, they're talking about AI, right? So it's a gradual process, and with time we will get there. To summarize, I am I'm just in the middle, right? I'm not pro or, against AI. I'm just very realistic to understand where I'm at now and why the human touch in recruiting is still very, maybe possibly even more important than the AI as it is today in 2025 in the Nigerian context. I know for people like Sophie, who's recruited across, in other parts, and Samuel, who lives in the UK, it might be different for them, right? But the reality in Nigeria today, and the most candidates that for the most part, people I hire are within Africa, right? I think we're not there yet. We will get there, but it's a gradual process. And I think that we just have to be very, very understanding of where we are and what we are trying to achieve, and focus. Keyword focus. Don't lose sight of what is within reach. That's pretty much my submission for now. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Akon-te. Yeah, I know you've never shied away being um, someone like a pessimist when it comes to AI and just being in the media. I say, you know what, where everybody's just trying to say AI and shouting the name, let's slow down a bit and look at our current realities. Thank you for that. Darlington, how are you? From where you stand, what's the state of hiring and candidate experience and all of that so far?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tolu, for that question. I would like to move away a little bit from what my esteemed discussants have submitted. I'd like to talk on skills-based hiring. And I'll start by saying I recently interviewed with a company based in Europe, right? And it was funny to hear when they mentioned that they prioritize skills-based and hiring, right? And they said that they weren't looking at my CV, to ask certain questions. And what they just did was the first stage was to send me um, some list of questions to answer. I had applied obviously, so they sent like an assessment. So I did all of that, and then they set up a call. Once that was successful, they set up a call, and we had an interview, a very good interview, as a matter of fact, right? And I think that many companies are beginning to embrace skills-based hiring. And for those on the call who may not possibly understand what that means, it just basically means that companies are beginning to focus on what you can do rather than what degrees or certificates that you have. So they focus more on the job, right, rather than the whole formal training and all of that. And if you play in the field that I play in, which is like technical hiring, you understand how this is like really important. So right now, I think why are companies moving toward it? I think because you can have more talent access, right? There are many good candidates who don't have fancy degrees, who don't have who have not worked in, just like Akon-te said, in many reputable companies, right? The McKinseys, the KPMGs, but they can do a very good job, right? So they don't prioritize all of those things. They just ask questions based on what you do in your field. If you're a recruiter, if you're a back-end guy, if you're a software developer, they just ask questions based on that. Set up maybe live coding sessions or whatever, and see how well you do, right? And in my opinion, this is actually faster. It's a faster hiring process, because when you're testing skills directly, it just helps employers to quickly know if someone is a good fit, right? Rather than, having to stress on other non-important things, to be honest, right? And one thing about skills-based hiring, in my opinion, is it is a very fair process, right? It just sort of reduces bias. So there isn't a case of, oh, this guy has worked in Paystack, let's interview him, he should be good, right? Or this person has worked at KPMG, it should be a very good candidate. So obviously, those guys are good. I mean, you can't, like I can't mention, you can't work in those companies and not expect some level of what's the word now? Of results, in quotes, right? So it just sort of reduces bias when you prioritize skills above, every other thing, right? And you could find that, someone from a smaller school or something, just is giving that same attention as someone from maybe a covenant. And the reason I'm saying this, I'll take us back to sometime earlier on in my career when I was sending profiles for a health tech brand, right? And this candidate just sort of they were always getting rejected even after passing our assessment. So I started to wonder why, and so I had to set up a call with the stakeholder, with the contact in the organization, and then he mentioned, oh, we usually prioritize people from certain schools, and of course it couldn't be in the JD, right? Because it's not really best practices, yeah, best practice. I beg your pardon, right? And then I found out that he only wanted to hire people from certain schools, but if you prioritize skills above every other thing, then you would see how fair that is, right? I think that companies should just prioritize checking skills. Um, yeah, they should prioritize checking skills. They could use certain platforms like like they could do practical tests. Their coding tasks, their case studies, their sample projects, or you could just look at maybe some past portfolios of talent. Their GitHub repos, design samples and whatnot. So that's all of us part of what I've observed in the past few months in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlington, for that contribution. Let's go to Samuel. Samuel, hi. How are you? What's the state of
Sorry, one
hiring?
second. I'm sorry that I'm
Okay,
jumping in right now. I was
Sophie.
wondering, yeah, when a speaker makes a point, is it possible to speak on that point?
Yeah, you can. You can just nudge me
Yeah.
and let me know. That's fine. Yeah, go ahead. You want
Okay.
you want to
Can
add
I?
to what
Yeah,
Darling?
yeah. Well, on Darlington's point on skills-based
Hmm.
hiring, very quickly, 3 points, but I'll really condense it fast. Um, I'm of the opinion that I do not know why skills-based hiring has become a thing per se, because this has always existed for years. I don't know why, I don't even know which thought leader decided to coin it as this fancy words or lingo, skills-based hiring, and decided, oh, this is a thing to watch out for. I can tell you categorically, between 2011, 12, 13, I had just done I was in the period of doing my master's at the time, and then I was in the UK and I was applying for jobs. I realized that within that ecosystem or geography, skills-based hiring was a thing. I can tell you for sure, some of the companies I had applied to for jobs, even with my master's, they will still pick somebody who had a 16-year-old or maybe an 18 or 19-year-old who already had like 3 or 4 years experience in that area. Maybe it's customer service. They had probably worked for maybe like Sky News or Sky or British Gas, whatever it is, for like 3, 4 years in that area because they had gathered the right skills for that role. And they would pick that person over me who had a huge degree. So this has always been a thing. It's always been. So why it has now recently become a a thing to look out for is what I don't know. That's one. Number two, um, it gets to a point in your career where skills-based hiring is just important. Who cares about a degree when you're hiring somebody with 15 years of experience or 20 years of experience? I mean, it's what you can do that would speak for you, right? So again, I still don't know who coined skills-based hiring as a thing. Thirdly, in Nigeria today, I know that Darlington is speaking from a tech perspective. I also have a strong background in engineering hiring, and it's what it is, right? You would have to prioritize the right skills, the right experiences over degrees. Because how many developers or engineers even want to pick up a degree anyway? But away from the technical engineering space or or ecosystem, other industries, other sectors I do not think have started to take on the adoption of skills-based hiring in a local Nigerian context. We still see cases where degrees are still being prioritized. And then it begs the question, how do we now get other industries, other sectors up to speed? Because the truth is, we are all recruiters or we are in talent, and we are not only fixated on the technology or engineering space. People also hire across other industries. So those those recruiters who are on the generalist side, I think that now begs the question, what is being done to get your industry, your sector up to speed with skills-based hiring? But again, I still maintain on a global scale, skills-based hiring has been there for time, in ages. I still do not know who that person is who coined it as this is a trend to watch. So yeah.
Thank you for adding to that conversation, Sophie. Dotun is saying in the chat that It's the value that education, is placed, value that is placed on education over skills. And I think that is where sort of found ourselves in this side of the divide. But I think we'll still come to that conversation, hopefully, during this call. But let's go to Samuel. Samuel, hi, how are you? Let's hear from you.
Good morning, sirs and man. Really, really exciting conversation, I must say. And I have my pen and paper. I can hear very, very strong ideas coming up there from Sophie, Darlington, and Akon-te. So thank you very much for sharing. I think I could pick it from just some of the things Sophie just rightly mentioned, and also what Darlington has shared around skills-based hiring. As Sophie rightly said, I've seen skills-based hiring rightly for over 10 years. I've seen that around for over 10 years. I think at some point we called it competency-based interviewing at some point. So it has been around for a while. So what I think the shift now is even we are now going back to behavioral based hiring because we've realized that a lot of times it's not even just what you can do in the workplace. And I'm speaking from what I've seen as a trend in the UK market now. We are returning back to the behavioral based hiring now. We are moving away from even that skills based because it is also important for us to understand that consistency is important in how we are bringing people into the organization. You are in technology, you are in finance, you are in HR. It is important that we still have certain things that govern the type of people we bring into an organization. And that's what also shapes our culture as an organization. So I realized that in organizations, even at my workplace, we've redefined how we access people. We are now focusing more on behaviors instead of just skills. And in each behavior, we can identify what have you done in your work. It will speak to your competency. For example, let's say a behavior that is being accessed is change readiness for a candidate. So we can tell from your previous experience how you adapted to. If you work in finance, what trends did you see in finance that you adapted to your work? Did you ensure you were change ready? It could even be around like regulations. It does not have to be anything IT based. So as simple as that. But I think the shift is now even going away from skills-based hiring to going back, it's not a new space. It's going back to behavioral-based hiring where the focus is on, how connected is this person when it comes to communication, stakeholder management, how connected is this person as a behavior? We are looking at, say, we are going back to things like, is this person a critical thinker as a behavior? And critical thinking cuts across all business function. If you are in IT and you know how to code, but um, you're not critically thinking how what you are building, how what you are developing is going to affect your users. You're just thinking of the code. You are just deploying what you've been hacked to. It also does not bring out the holistic value in what you're building. So I think that's one of the shifts I have seen, at least at my organization. We deployed new set of behaviors some 2 months back that we are rolling into our recruitment process actively. So I think that is something to also look at. And I've seen a few top organizations in the UK as well go back to that. I think the second bit of it is on the AI, which Sophie also led, and Akon-te shared some very interesting insights on. And when it comes to AI, I think 2 months back, Workday had a lawsuit in the US, and I'm sure a good number of us might have seen that. And a black disabled guy in his 40s realized that he had been applying to jobs via Workday, and someone just gave him an insight to say, you know what, take out the fact that you are black and take out the fact that you are disabled and reapply with the same skill set and everything, and he got called. Then that's where the issue started, and there was a class action somewhat against Workday that really got to court. I'm not sure if they have any decision yet, but we need to also understand that legal implications are coming into the recruitment process with regards to AI use. I think that's also something we need to, and a good number of organizations are now deploying the use of AI into screening candidates, into candidate shortlisting, communication, and all of that. But we also need to understand that these challenges, are going to come into place. And I know that Akon-te mentioned something, for example, like Bain, McKinsey, and these guys they use this thing at the back end. And while and I've seen I'm not naming any organization. I've seen people provide data at the back end for in Nigeria, for example. I remember back then, And then people put in schools like, what are the schools you want to prioritize? I see University of Lagos, Covenant University, Obafemi Awolowo, UI, all the schools are listed as priorities. Does not mean there are not some amazing candidates from LASU, from Amadu Bello. But because their school has not been listed, AI bias would set in at that point. It's called proxy data bias. So it's going to take them out because they were not listed as top candidates. So things like that are still playing. So if you look at it in the context of markets like the UK, the US, Canada, Ivy League schools are listed for some schools, for some organizations rather, where they've identified the type of unis they want to hire from, the Ivy Leagues in the US, the Imperial College in the UK, the Warwick, Business School. They've already listed these things. So it's also, and we also need to realize that there are also socioeconomic factors that influence candidates to be able to get into the school. Either you are from an affluent background or you are super intelligent. Even at that, most people are from affluent background. So you still realize that the category of people they are hiring in those environments are still predominantly white, if that makes sense, because they're usually the affluents that go into these unions. So you still realize that AI is outrightly not taking out the old bias we have been talking about in the recruitment process. It is also still following how it is programmed, how it is trained into the system. So I think that is one big issue that we also need to just be aware of, the legal implications that would come with this if candidates start picking up in the future to say we are raising a class action. We've seen the 40 people you hired from this graduate training class, and they are all from Ivy League schools. It can be a class action that could really be considered. And then the second bit of it is the evaluation data, and that one talks a bit to, let's say, an organization has defined the type of behavior they are also looking out for in their AI system. And a lot of times, when behaviors are defined in quote here, it does not even have to be behaviors or certain things, how people communicate or cultures. Even some organizations impute this now at the back end. When AI is evaluating some of this data, you realize that, and because these data are trained on current workforce in the UK, an average of 80% of employees in the UK in top organizations are predominantly white. So if you train your AI using your employee representation demography, you realize that it will tend towards the majority. So it is also important for us to understand that the data we train our AI with, there are very high chances that we might be having legal implications attached to them in the nearest future. So I think that's just what I'm just going to add to the AI bit of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let me just quickly go to the chat box. Quite some interesting conversation. Aisha is saying that we just can't take away the human touch when it comes to recruitment. And then often saying that the use of AI in screening gives consent to candidates moving forward. Applicants are requested to accept or reject if they want to be screened by AI. So this is the way TS companies are avoiding lawsuits and giving candidates heads up. Well, let's see. Let's see how the AI, because I know that there's a lot when it comes to even for example, in terms of your vendor, if you're choosing a vendor, you need to understand how, just like what Samuel said, you need to understand how your vendor has trained its AI. And so if you're not really conversant with that, yeah, and if you're not up to speed with that, and you choose that particular vendor and there's a set of data that has been used to train that AI, that might not really work out for you, So, but in Nigeria, we'll still let's maybe park the AI boss. I know that a number of us still use AI, in the things that we do and all of that, but I'm sure we'll come to that. Let's go to something that is very, and maybe Samuel, I'll start with you because I know that you could jump off the call anytime. Let's still go to the state of candidate experience in 2025. How has the candidate experience space been? What have you seen? And I know there's a lot going on. I'm sure Darlington has a lot to say on that, and I believe Akon-te too. But Samuel, let's go to you. The state of candidate experience so far, how has it been? What have you seen? What are those things that you think we need to begin to shift, or recruiters begin to shift, or are there things that recruiters and maybe recruitment or operations or the hiring managers need to begin to know? Let's hear from you, Samuel.
Yeah, great. For me, I think from candidate experience perspective, I've always prioritized candidate experience as a KPI. And when I was leading a team in Nigeria, at least a few times, one of the things I always recommended was candidate experience should be a KPI for everyone on the talent acquisition team. That's something I always advocate for. You know, your candidate feedback should be part of your KPIs. It is very, very important. And the reason I say it is because there's the cultural nuance to Nigerians in I'm sure a good number we understand power dynamics culture from our cultural context that in most cases when people feel they have power over someone else, they look down on them. And it is very common with recruiters in Nigeria where because you have seen a candidate applying for a job, you presume you are doing them a favor. So it also influences that relationship. So, I think it's something to always prioritize to ensure that candidate experience is part of, a recruiter's KPI. What's it called? Your this thing as what's it, Sal Olorimi? Your what's this called? Net NPM NPS. Thank you. Well, the
Yeah.
thing ran off, like totally went off. Your NPS score from your candidate should be something that is, added as your as performance evaluators. That is one of it. From a candidate experience perspective, for me in the last year, the bad thing, which is good a bit, is that the organization I work with, we prioritize candidate experience a whole lot. So it is part of our daily lives. It is part of our daily lives. So, from every touch point, basically, every time we are talking about process improvement, and that's also something to look at. From every time we are looking at process improvement opportunities, pain points, opportunities for improvement, we should not just look at internal stakeholders. We should also engage external stakeholders, and I think that is one of the key things that for my organization we do. So it is not just asking for feedback; it is real time calling candidates that, especially people like silver medalists, candidates that were rejected. Yeah, you will now try to reach out to candidates that we do not feel their qualifications were good enough because they might not have any real value to add to that conversation. But those that were actively engaged at different touch points, to say interview level, to say offer level, to engage them, ask them, what were the challenges they experienced at every stage. In the recruitment process. So I think that's one of the things I have seen more now. Engaging candidates as stakeholders real time and getting their input in improvement processes for recruitment. I think that's one of the things I would add to that.
All right. Thank you. Let's go to Darlington. Darlington, what have you seen in the state of candidate experience so far, January to August 2025? What are those practices or nuances in addition to what Samuel spoke about?
Yeah, honestly, I think that they've been some improvement. I think that many organizations are beginning to actually pay attention, right? And so that is kudos to the HRs, kudos to marketing, and all of those people involved in making sure that every company has very good employer brand in quote, right? Yesterday I made a post on the group. I said that I posted something about a candidate, being moved on to the next stage, like a 7th stage interview, right? And it was a friend that actually shared it with me, and it was very weird, to be honest, right? And I posted that because I feel like some organizations still do not understand how important a candidate's time is, right? And why are some reasons why organizations should pay? I mean, I said something about sort of showing appreciation. It might be monetary, it might be something else, whatever the case, right? But then again, it is important that companies understand candidates' time, and they should understand that candidates' time equals value, right? So if a candidate invests time in a multi-stage interview. Now, the emphasis here is multi-stage interviews, case studies. I'm not talking about um, you know, putting candidates through maybe 2, 3, 4 stages. No, I'm saying like multi-stage interview processes, case studies, assignments, and all of that. It is more or less you could even just consider that consulting work, right? Because it's not easy to be involved in such rigorous process, right? And when you show appreciation to candidates after putting them through this level of through these stages, right? It just sort of it shows that you're acknowledging that labor has value, right? And in my opinion, it also shows fairness and equity, right? And because I feel like candidates from less privileged backgrounds may actually, like struggle to commit to time, right, for unpaid case studies, right? And it's not just it's not something that's nice. I cannot really overemphasize this. I just feel like if you have to, push candidates through multi-stage interviews, you should show appreciation for that. It is very important. It is really important. And I think I'll just close by saying that maybe there are middle ground approaches to this. So maybe you can't afford to pay in quotes, for candidates' time and everything. Then maybe you should only just pay for intensive assignments. I remember one of my friends recently, went through an interview process. It was quite a rigorous process, and they had asked him to work on an assessment and all. And after everything, I think they had sent him, was it 200K or something? And so that if for me, if I went through that rigorous process and you pay me that amount, right, and I don't eventually get the job, it's okay for me, right? Because I know that the time that I'd put into, to get that case studies done and everything. I mean, I've been shown appreciation, so that's something. Or maybe, gift cards as appreciation or something like that, right? So I'll just end by saying that organizations should strongly consider compensating candidates for multi-stage, time-heavy interviews or case studies. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right. Thank you so much, Darlington, for that. Samuel had to drop off the call, but expresses his gratitude. So let's go to Sophie. Um, hmm, what do you see regarding the state of candidate experience, especially when we send reject letters or reject emails to candidates? What have you seen so far? What has worked, and what do you think should be improved upon? Let's hear from
Hmm. Okay, because you just boxed me now into the whole rejection stage, but
you.
I would I will touch on that. But let me give a quick one. I would say there's been major improvements. And this is me now just giving major shout outs to every recruiter, talent expert working within the Nigerian ecosystem. There has been major improvements. I think this is as a function of some of us having worked with global companies, understand seeing these best practices, and then cascading it down to our local nuance context, which is great. I also think it's as a function of some of these companies being owned by the younger generations, maybe a tech company being owned by somebody who is young, you see like the child decks and etc. And then these people understand the need for the right culture. Because for you to have a great candidate experience, that means your company has the right culture, you practice the right culture within. So as I would say, there's been some improvements within within Nigeria in general. Um, there definitely still has a lot of work to be done. And I say this because when we talk about candidate experience, it doesn't only start from when you have the first touch points with the candidate from like a verbal touch points, meaning when you start to have your recruiter calls or your discovery calls. It doesn't just start from there. It actually starts from when you draft your job description. What sort of language are you using in the job description? How inclusive are you? If I see a job description and it's telling me you are looking for somebody who is powerful, who is strong, I'm like, do you want to make me suffer here? No, 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 thank you. I'm not going to be a part of that. So we need to be mindful, excuse me, and use the right language that would attract the right people. That is also part of your experience. When your candidates come in contact with your job description, before they even reach out, get in contact with the recruiters or anyone within the recruiting cycle, they need to have that right experience, that right feel before they start to move through the process. So these are some of the things we need to think about. From a rejection point, excuse me. Firstly, we need to even think about, let's talk about ghosting. We still have that problem. That problem is still very prevalent within our ecosystem here in Nigeria, but not even just Nigeria alone, even globally, it's still a problem. We need to do better. A lot of people still complain, and I know this because I have quite a number of coaches and mentees who still tell me, oh, I'm interviewing with this company, I'm interviewing with that company. I'm not going to call out names in case that's your company, so that you will not say, I came on this call to shoot straight bullets. But anyway, they still tell me these things, and I wonder, like, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I have a younger brother who's interviewed with one of the biggest Big Fours, and he's interviewed for like 4 weeks now. No feedback, nothing. He's already telling me, oh, every day he's asking me, oh, what's the problem? I said, how will I know the problem? Am I working in the company? He said, from your experience in recruiting and blah, blah. So I gave him all these scenarios. But this is a really, really smart guy anyway, so I don't think he's going to fail. But I just think that it's taking too long. Even if you don't have the right response yet, still have a touch point with that candidate. We are still evaluating. Hey, we'll still give you feedback. Still bear with us. Let them understand that there's still something, happening in the process. Number one, do not ghost your candidates. Give them the right feedback because it's very important. And when it's time to give rejections, if you do not know how to give objective rejection letters or emails, please go, I don't know, use ChatGPT for it, or just look for a generative AI that can help you draft these things and then keep them as templates. Because again, I think it's on this group. Oh yeah, fantastic. Drag you like Tiger Gen generator, is that what they call it? Or drag you Darlington. But anyways, on the Recruiters Hub, I think I'd seen somebody who had mentioned something around the lines of oh shoot, I forgot my train of thoughts. Ugh. I was looking at your face so much, Ajaida, I totally forgot my train of thought. But basically, I think what's most important for us is it's important that we give the right feedback and we need to give it at the right time. Our rejections have to come in steady, but at the same time, do not be subjective in your responses. Oh, yes, I remember my train of thought now. It was something around the lines of a rejection letter, email rather, and then that email said something around the lines of you told our recruiters that they wasted your time, something something like that. I'm like, who does that? Even if the candidate gave such feedback and you don't want them again, make your rejection generic and just move on. You don't have to start nitpicking and make it look like you're witch hunting that candidate. Then also set SLAs or set timelines for every process in for every stage in your recruiting process rather. So if you are going to move a candidate through to this stage in your ATS, there has to be an SLA or something that says that they cannot, once the candidate moves into rejection, the rejection bin, they cannot stay here for more than 24 hours, such that every recruiter knows that this is also part of their KPIs actually. When I worked at Microsoft, we called it 3E. So it's important for us to clean up our data. So for every stage in the process, candidates cannot stay for more than 24 hours. So every day before the end of the day, you have to dedicate 1 hour of your time to go look through your pipeline and clean it up. You must clean it up because you don't want to keep a candidate waiting for so long. So I think it's very important for us to note that. And then finally, I don't know if we have also noticed this thing, and I'm speaking now from a generic candidate experience perspective on a more global scale. Because now it has sort of become an employer's world because there are now less jobs. And so that means employers can do how they like. You can just do anyhow. And this is not Nigeria alone. It's global. I've started to see that there have now become the prevalence of empty jobs being advertised. So you will see a specific company would advertise for a role, but they're actually not hiring for that role. You see lots of candidates apply. The next thing, you don't see the role for another like 2 weeks. Then again, it's back up again. And then I'm hearing from internal recruiters who I know as friends, what's happening with this role? And they say they're actually not hiring. They just put it there as a blank just to get lots of candidates in so that for any time in the next year or two, where they actually now need that role, then they start to reach out to these people. And I'm like, the industry is already bleeding. Every day on LinkedIn, I'm bawling my eyes out because I'm seeing thought leaders coming to cry and say, please, I'm desperate for a job. Please, I've been out of the market for 1 year. I can no longer fend for my children. I can no longer fend for my family. And then here you are putting up blanks on job posts. It doesn't make sense to me. I know you want to pull up like create a talent pool, but can we be sensible about how we do these things? Because it also, at the same time, speaks to the kind of experience that you are going to create for your candidates when they come in through the pipe. I feel like I've said a lot, so I'm just going to pause now. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sophie. Quite a number there, especially with the blank. I don't know if it's something that other colleagues on the call are also seeing. Please, if you're seeing blank ads in the market, can you just put it on the chat? Let's see if that is what you're also seeing. Quickly, Chioma wants to speak. Chioma, are you there? You want to speak on candidate experience? Can you unmute? All right, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
First of all, apologies for joining late. No public holiday for me today. I'm going to talk briefly on candidate experience, and it's going to be a combination of what Darlington and Sophie have said. First of all, there is a lot of improvement when it comes to candidate experience, particularly in the local setting, which is Nigeria, in our local setting, Nigeria. For me, I would say thanks to LinkedIn, thanks to Glassdoor review, and thanks to Twitter. Now on Twitter, you can just go and put in the name of an organization and you're seeing the organization's gist. And as much as recruiters are doing very well, recruiters are really improving, kudos to them. But I would also say that somehow it feels like a lot of us have fire in our bum, and that is why we are doing better at these things. I would appreciate if recruiters can do this because, not just because it is best practice, but because we are all humans and they are actually putting the human in the HR. Whether we like it or not, recruitment is still HR. We're actually putting the human in the HR other than we just doing it because we're trying to tick a box or we're trying not to get dragged or called out on social media. Because for me, I think most recruiters just do this because of the call-outs. We should do it because we are actually humans and we are dealing with humans and we just want them to have a great experience throughout. Now, for the improvement, I would say, like Sophie had said, for the improvement, it's mostly the small organizations, it's mostly the startups, maybe because of it is mostly headed by millennials these days, or maybe because, I don't know, for whatever reason, it is still the startups and the small and medium businesses. When it comes to the big organizations, FMCGs, the banks, and all of those, the candidate experience, honestly, I've not seen any improvements. I've not seen. I might be wrong, but I've not seen any improvement. It is still it is still not a good experience. Like Fumi said, maybe because of internal stakeholders, not even maybe, yes, it is. I know line managers and departmental heads can frustrate processes, but we are also in position to manage all of this. This is our responsibilities. So this is our responsibility to manage all stakeholders involved here. So even when there is a delay from line managers or departmental heads, even when we are not getting feedback, we should always go back. Feedback should not only come after an interview. or feedback should not only come when a line manager has given us feedback. When there is a 2-week, 1-month gap in between, it is our responsibility as recruiters to be able to go back to the candidates and tell them, oh, there is no feedback for whatever, however you want to put it, but just make the candidate understand that we still have you in mind, you're still in the process, but we don't have any concrete feedback yet from the interviewers. And once we get feedback, we'll definitely get back to you. Also, I'm going to talk about consulting companies and agencies, because most times they're the ones that manage this recruitment process for organizations. I think we are very, very lackadaisical. I'm saying we because I also work in that space. We are very, very lackadaisical about this. We make it look like, since it is not our organization directly, it is not our business. It is our business. It is not. It is our business. Again, I'll go back to the fact that most times we do these things because we don't want to get called out. We feel, oh, we are not the ones that will get called out. No, it's not about being called out. It's not about being dragged. What about the people involved? A lot of these people, like Sophie had said, they've been out of job for like a year. A lot of these people have families to fend for. A lot of these people are already going through mental health challenges because they don't have anything to do. How about we make this thing easier for them? How about we make this process easier for them? If the client you are hiring for is not responding, reach out to the candidates. Let these candidates know. Don't increase people's anxiety. I don't know how to put this. Shout out to the startups, shout out to the small organizations. They are really, really doing better. But for the big organizations and then consulting that stand in between, I think we still have a lot of job to do. I might sound really, really pained, but I have some I'm still dealing with right now, and we have a lot to do in that space. We have a lot to do in that space. Then another thing I want to talk about is rejection. For me, I feel like as much as we have most of us have standardized processes, we should also personalize these things. For example, I can be on a call with a candidate and I already know that, okay, this candidate, especially when it's around like the first stage, I already know that this candidate will not make it through. Sometimes on the call, I tell the candidate there, but I put it in such a way that the candidate understands. I talk about their strengths first, and then I come to their weakness, and I tell them, oh, actually, for this role, you'll not be a great fit because of this, and this. This is where I think you should improve in case of another interview. We need to give them this feedback. It's not just, oh, this person did not make it. We'll allow the person to say all of his life history finish, and then we'll not send an email and say, we would not be able to continue with you. Where does it put the candidate? Why don't you just go ahead, take it? No, fine, you can do it via email, it's fine. But for me personally, sometimes I like telling it to the candidate on the spot. Let the candidate know, oh, you should do better in this way, you should do better in this other aspects. When you're
On
asked
board is
this, I think you should
successful
talk
from
it
this
out.
chat, and then we'll basically go from there. Please make your
Okay. I think I lost my train of thought. Just personalize it and then make the experience better generally. I think that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chioma. I know that you are in the middle of a lot of things and you had to just jump in on that. Akon-te, I'm coming to you in a bit on client experience. I just want to read some few thoughts in the chat.
one thing about me.
All right. So I didn't
Boss man.
someone's conversation is speaking. Okay.
Boss man.
Who's that? Seems someone is on the call. Mickey, hold on. Hold on, Mickey. Hold on.
Mickey's mic is on. Darlington's mic is on.
Yeah. Darlington, you can just mute your mic. You're right. So I wanted to read something in the chat. I think it's something to look at so that others on the call would also sort of know that their thoughts also matter. Aderesola is saying that organizations can also pay transport allowance as support during site-based interviews. I don't think my organization will pay you any money. I don't know. And maybe Akon-te's organization might pay you. You hold the cash, bro. But I think it's something I've heard of companies that have done that before. Adedotun, maybe Otun can pay. I think from my hand, I mean, I haven't practiced TA for a while, and I don't do call of TA every day now. It's the justification, right, to go to your stakeholders And again, you look at the level of your hiring, how well you do volume hiring and all of that. I'm in an organization where the operation is like a madhouse, right? I'm in the security sector and it's a madhouse. We have over 20,000 workforce. You don't want to know how that is. And I understand that a lot of them are frontline workers and all of that. But the reality is we can't even pay. And but for those who are like like back office staff and all of that, so we've categorized them. One of the things that we've done is to ensure that we're clear on what the process looks like from the get-go and ensure that we don't as much waste your time, right? And so we won't literally say, oh, we want you to come and interview tomorrow, knowing fully well that you need time to be able to even know, what the role is about, send you the profile and all of that, So I think it's for a lot of us who probably might not be able to pay, is to understand your process and be able to communicate in a way that candidates would sort of feel to say, okay, you know what, I can maybe spend, and we also don't want to waste your time, right? To say, okay, anything more than 45 minutes, an hour per week in terms of conversation, it's okay. We'll gladly move it to another week if it be, except if the candidate is just okay. Oh, maybe if we have a conversation on Monday or Tuesday, you can, and we want to fast track it, you want to have it on a Friday. So I'll just quickly go to someone is saying, let me see. Formula is saying that on ghosting, internal stakeholders are a major player here, but yeah, you need to keep to your candidates. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find what this is. You need to keep your candidate warm at all times because if you don't recruit them now, you may need them later, which is very true. You may need them tomorrow. Dr. says something profound. He says that I think we're missing something here, and it's putting so much responsibility on the stakeholder that doesn't have more than 10%, right, of the internal control process. That is the internal recruitment process. And even with feedback generic, let me see, even with the feedback being generic, most times because of the hiring managers, which is true, they will tell you that this is what I want, and you have to know back and all of that. Of course, I think Sophie responds that we have no excuse for ghosting. I can say I'm also guilty of ghosting. It's my fault because I won't say it's not my fault. But I also have to blame the tech because right now, so at some point the tech wasn't working or we didn't have the right tech, and then the volume, and then again is the hiring manager. I know that there's a role currently I'm working on. It's a senior role. My GMD had met with the candidates, but GMD was out of the country for like almost 2 weeks. It's not available, and I have to keep telling the candidates. I've not gotten any feedback from candidates, which is true. I've not gotten feedback from my GMD and all of that. So sometimes your stakeholders are also making it difficult. But like I think Fumi said, you have to also keep them warm. Kebab says something that there are consulting companies who are pushing blank jobs, and something we need to look out for. Formula wants to share something. Formula will still come up. Ademika is saying, ideal, don't ghost candidates. Reality, we always ghost. Thank you. We should just try to not make it an habit. Okay. I'm sure a lot of us, a number of us have also been recruitment processes where they will like, we want the candidates now. And then you go through the process and then you're like, after 3 weeks, you're calling the person who called you to say like, what's going on? I told the person where we wanted to. So sometimes we're at the giving end, at other times we are at the receiving end. So let me go to, I'll still come back to you, Fumulayo. I know you wanted to speak, and Mickey, but let's quickly hear from Akon-te. Akon-te, your chiming on the
Thank you.
candidate experience conversation.
Yeah, thanks. So, like everybody has said, I think I agree that it has greatly improved. But there was a point Samuel raised that I wanted to touch on. Sadly, it's dropped off the call, but I'll just go ahead and still share. I think Samuel mentioned about, sorry, apologies. I'm a bit of an unconventional recruitment person. I know most of my thoughts may not really align with, a lot of the thoughts that we have on the call. But what I wanted to say on that point was, I think Samuel mentioned about, asking candidates to share feedback. And that is one of the KPIs that I've been fighting my guys, my OPEX team about, because it's something that we're also graded on. I personally have had to fill out a candidate feedback form, and I scored it very poorly, right? When I was younger, much younger, not because the experience was not great, but because I felt very bad for not getting the job. And I was very young at the time. And I know that it's subjective, you cannot. So as much as possible, we should try to make sure that whatever it is that we are having as our KPIs are to a large extent objective. Candidate experience is not as objective as it should be. Well, so far as I know, and because I have been on both sides, I've given feedback as a candidate and I've also gotten feedback as a recruiter. Now, in cases where I've not gotten very positive reviews, I looked at the entire thing and I don't see any way that the feedback should have been poorly written. And I even reached out to the candidate and said, oh, I saw your feedback. Is there anything that you didn't really like about the entire process? I said, no, nothing. No. So you rated it poorly. And say, yeah, that was just, it's my feedback. There's nothing. It's mine. You asked me to fill it, and that is what I want to grade you on. That's okay, fine, that's fine. So my point really is it's very subjective, just the same way the KPI for I think we were discussing one time on the Recruiters Hub about a candidate joining and not seen to be a performer after a certain period. How is that the recruiter's problem? The recruiter was a stakeholder, just the same with the hiring manager and whoever it is that was in that process. Got the person in. Perhaps the guys who were supposed to carry out the onboarding, the L&D team in most cases, and the hiring manager didn't do their jobs. And all of a sudden, it becomes the problem of the recruiter. How? So these things are very subjective. And to a large extent, I disagree. And I don't think it's something that I encourage where I work today. And I've had to fight some of these things and say that, look, it doesn't make sense. How can a person not performing be my problem? We all hire this person together. You decided the hiring manager, because for the most part, the hiring manager decides who he wants to work with. And the onboarding in itself is done in collaboration with the team where the person is working in and HR, for the most part, the L&D team, right? To ensure that the person is onboarded on the relevant platforms, all the tools they need to know how to use, the training, all of the things are done. And the person fails to perform after 6 months, maybe there's an extension of the probationary period, and then it becomes the problem of the recruiter. Sorry, I don't agree. So that was the point I wanted to raise that Samuel spoke about. So again, candidate experience is fine, but it's very subjective. And so it's not a very great KPI to measure a recruiter. And the other point I also wanted to talk about is the fact that, yes, I must hold my hand up and say, yes, I'm also guilty, right? My recruitment process is not as straightforward, and it's very lengthy. If you've interviewed my company in the last maybe few months, you would know that it's not as easy, right? It's not a place where you just do one interview and the next day you're getting an offer letter. No, there's certain processes that you have to go through, and as Sister is laughing, you have to go through, and those things are done for a reason, right? My point is, so long as the candidate has prior information as to how the process would run, then I think I don't see any problem with it. So typically we would send the entire process, send like an email or something, like sometimes on LinkedIn, just share how the whole stages are. And then the candidate is supposed to confirm that they're fine, you understand, and if there are any questions you want to ask, please go ahead and ask them. So long as you agree to go through all this process, then I don't think there's a problem with that, so long as the person knows, right? And what I also wanted to also touch on is the fact that I just want to capture everything so I don't have to speak twice. The other point about the payments being given for doing case study, that's fine. Some companies do. I've also received before. There was a time I had to go for an interview in Ibadan and I got transport money, to and fro. But my company don't give it, and that is because we're a remote-based organization, right? Every interview you'd have to go through where I work is going to be virtual. We work remotely. So that may not really apply. I know Stolu was asking if we give money. No, we don't give money. And that is because we don't require you to come in physically or do any of those things. Even if you have to do a case study, it's something you would have been pre-informed about, and you would confirm and consent to it to say, I'm fine with doing this. If you're not, I've had to reach out to people who said, oh, they're not willing, and that's fine. We call it a day. We still keep, our, what's it called? It's still cordial, we still talk, and there are people who have dropped off my process and we'll still keep in touch. If there are other things that I know that maybe from friends that I know about that they may be a fit for, I still recommend them. And finally, on the point of giving feedback, one way I've also been guilty of sometimes I'm not giving feedback. Sometimes the work can get very overwhelming and you forget to give feedback, to a couple of people, and it becomes very disastrous, quote unquote. But how I've learned in my own way to keep track with candidates is to save their numbers. These days, I just even sometimes do voice notes right on WhatsApp. Sometimes I just even drop a text to say, "Hi, guy, I'm still waiting." I think it's faster, it's on the go, unlike having to always go to your mail and send plenty grammar. Sometimes it's just a voice note to say hi. And I'm very cordial with my candidates such that it's not so much of grammar. I'm trying to hire you. We are friends, right? I create that relationship. So even if they are not, I posted something on my WhatsApp status recently where a candidate was saying, "Oh, this is the best process." If it's a very long process, it's the best process I've had to be through, even though I've had to do things that I've never been used to before. But the way you've carried me along with how the process has gone, I think I'm very interested. I want to work with you. So it's more communication. And communication does not have to be via email. It could be any way. WhatsApp, I save their numbers, on my phone. Even if you don't get picked at the end of the day, we still keep in touch. There are people that most of my closest acquaintances today, right, are people that I've had to hire. Sometimes hasn't worked, and that's because you just stay in touch. Something else could be open tomorrow and they would be the first people you would call. They're dropping off not because they were not good enough, maybe for some reason, they got a raise where they're working today and they had to stay back or something. It could just be anything. It may not necessarily be that they were not good enough for the role. There are different reasons why a candidate can be dropped off, the process. So communication really it doesn't have to be conventional. My style is very unconventional, and I like to reach out sometimes informally. Like today, I've had to speak with about 2 candidates that are still in the process, waiting to meet going to the next round of the interview, and it's just been WhatsApp, right? So that's just all the thoughts. I was just making notes of what I wanted to speak about, but I think these ones are really much. And then finally, sorry, apologies, just one more point on the blank jobs. Yeah, I totally disagree that we should put out jobs that are not open. But what we can do as a substitute, which I also do, is to call it clearly what it is, right? Unsolicited application. There's no job. It's just a place to come and dump your CV. And if there is a job, eventually, people in that pool will be considered for the role. So don't say it's a finance manager or software engineer and make it look like a proper job. What you'd rather say is unsolicited application is better because they know there's no job, right? They know they're not expecting to get any sort of, ongoing feedback because it's just a pool at best. So that in itself helps to, manage expectations. So nobody's expecting you to call them in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's clear what it is, right? And that is something you would find on my website. If you go to my careers page today, it's unsolicited. So if there's a job that you fit for, surely you would come into the pool officially. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Listening
Thank
to
you,
my
Akon-te.
yeah.
No, that was good. That was good. You touched on something. I'm not sure we'll be able to talk about it. Maybe later, maybe the next edition, we might talk about careers page. I think it's something that we probably would want to explore. Fumilayo, are you there? You wanted to say something. Can you unmute and speak now before we have the next round of conversation? Hello, Fumilayo, are you there?
Yeah, good morning.
Hello,
Hi.
good morning.
All right, so I made some notes just so that I don't forget, and this is on feedback and candidate experience. So first, one thing I started doing was even at the final stage, and stakeholders, they get very tricky when it's at the final stage, and then they start delaying, and then especially maybe they've spoken to like 2, 3 very good candidates, and they're just not sure how to make up their minds. I start sending keep in view that, oh, we're just in the process of making decisions and all of that. Because at the final stage, you just have maybe between 2 to 3 people on your hands at the most. So it's easier for one to manage. And I think the issue here is none of us wants to ghost. It's just, again, like this person said, that it's things beyond our control. So it's just a lot of pressure on us, as you know, in the recruitment function and all of that. So what I just started doing was I would like set those emails. There's templates for all of these things. You can even, I mean, you can go online, you see a lot of templates for this thing, and then you refine it to what you want. So I started by doing like having a KIV template. So I just like let them know that, yeah, you're still being considered and all of that. I understand you've not heard from us and all, and but we're just waiting for the stakeholders to make their final decision. So I saw that that helped with responses from candidates to me as the recruiter. Then secondly, there was something that my former manager did at the time that I started working with the team. He um, asked us to create a candidate evaluation form, like a candidate survey. So it goes out with the rejection mail, or like even if it's a hiring mail or whatever, like the last mail to go out to the candidate in the process. So it goes out with it, and then they are able to rate also. That way, your profile is showing and you are linked to that candidate. Everybody is saying, like, he can see what that candidate is saying and all of that. So it's sort of like helped to know what to change. It could even be that it's the hiring manager that had the issue or something, not you as the recruiter in interfacing. Yeah, then so yes, it can be automated and then sent out rejection bills at so and you know, that way it reduces repetitiveness, you know, in the whole process. Then so I think the third part is for some of us that in between recruitment processes we change jobs, so we neglect to like, yeah, the candidates are already in our pipeline, even or maybe if you're using LinkedIn and it's linked to probably an ATS like Workable, it's now looking very you know, tricky, and you're wondering how you want to do it. So what I just did was, there are some of these guys that had already sent requests, and also I started by like after I'd transitioned and all, I just I discovered that in like 2 months I'd not, you know, said anything, and apparently where I was coming from, nobody exactly transferred them, or I don't know how to explain it, but there was nobody that like went back to that pipeline. I mean, of course, the persons they hired, they had already moved them and all of that, but the remaining guys that probably sent in their case studies or that I had conversations with or something, there was nothing for it. So I had to now send messages on LinkedIn. Oh, hi, I'm so sorry for the you know, the long silence. I had transitioned to somewhere else. And you know, I apologize for this, but in the case that I have any roles here that might interest you, I'll be sure to you know, respond. And that's why I had made the point of you need to keep your candidates warm. I did not need them immediately there, and but at the time of transitioning, I just had to like remember that I might meet anything in front. So yeah, so I think, yeah, for case studies, like Darlington had mentioned that, yeah, if you like, you're supposed to compensate them and all of that. So for you to not even have to get to that point, you need to be able to set a word limit. So recently there was a case study that I wanted to give like a really senior role and all of that. And the CEO said, you think these professionals like that will have time and all of that? I mean, I was not even the one that asked that they should do a case study. It was one of the other stakeholders that were like, oh, they should do a case study that we can read, and then it will form the basis of our conversations during the interviews. So I was like, okay, no problem. We can like make just 2 questions and then set a word limit to like no more than 50 words. So it means that you're just like jotting, right? And then you come on the show and you buttress your points, you like develop your points while speaking and all of that. And I discovered that out of 7 people I sent it to, 6 people responded. One of I think the seventh person was in transit. So I was not having to say that, oh, do it in PowerPoint presentation or something, because that way I have to now like keep following up, and it's like I'm begging them to respond, you know. So it's this whole thing has like it has changed. This whole thing, it changes over time, and you just have to like adjust. You have to find something that works for you, that works for the stakeholders, and that works for the candidates as well. And finally, you can actually help your stakeholders make up their minds. You can help them make up their minds. Once they say, oh, okay, I'm not sure I want to go ahead with that guy, no problem. Just draft out the rejection mail. And Let them come back next week and say that, okay, how about that? I've sent him rejection mail. It will help them in their decision making going forward. Even if they want to say, oh, but why didn't you say yes, but you said you were not sure. And so I acted based on it. So because they need to also understand that you have a lot on your table. You're a busy professional. You need to give them that mentality, or else they'll just keep like running in circles, running in circles. There's a candidate I've been managing since June or even May. And I've had to be sending out weekly check-ins. I'm now tired. And then I'm still getting feedback from management and they're like, oh, so what's up with this person? I'm like, what do you mean what's up? The feedback is supposed to come from us. So I don't understand the what's up. Meanwhile, I'm keeping the person warm, right? But I just need them to like make up their mind. So you need to like create that impression for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Fumilayo, for those insights. I think there was something, Sophie, that you said that I kind of liked, and I think that will work a lot, maybe for those who have some tech with their recruitment. You mentioned, it was something that you did when you were in Microsoft where, the SLA has been set in such a way that within 24 hours, you need to go back to your pool and ensure that, you clean out the data, you ensure that the people at every stage, once the feedback is there and then, you're not moving forward with them, the recycle bin or rejection bin, you reach out to them and you do the needful. In my head, I'm looking at how that work for those who don't have any HR tech, right? ATS or something. And it would be good if, people can find a way, some system to make that work, to ensure that I think that once you get the feedback from the hiring managers to say, okay, we're not moving forward with these people, just go straight and do it. And it could be the last 15 minutes of the day that you have at work. You just go there, you have the template set, and then we just roll it out. I say, you know what, this is it. And then if you want to give it the touch, the more personal touch, like Akon-te, if you have their contacts, you might want to, reach out to them personally and all of that. And I kind of like I agree with Dotun. I also agree, I see Dotun, or I agree with Akon-te too, that some things that are subjective, as much as feedback is, you don't want to hold that over your head or hold that over the head of a recruiter, especially when you really like the company, but then they now move on with someone else, and then they now send you kind of feedback. You just said that it's rubbish now. What do you mean? It's poor. You sort of want to rate them poor, and sometimes it happens to the best of us and all of that. So, Sophie, yeah, your hand is raised.
Yeah, very spot on what you had said. But I wanted to quickly add on to two quick things. Just as a response to, because I was just looking through the chat and I'd seen, I think it's Adeyemika that had made a statement around ghosting. Again, sorry that I'm bringing us back to this, but I think it's such a bad attitude that we need to actually nip in the bud. And that's not to say that I have never ghosted. When I first started my career into the mid period of my career, I had also, done, contributed to the ghosting pool in Nigeria, but here's what I would say. If you're hiring within a geography with very limited talents, I promise you, ghosting will not be in your dictionary. The reason is because every single candidate that you have touch points with, they are gold, whether you could hire them in the moment or not. I can give you a classic example. I hired quite aggressively in Israel. I was hiring engineers. Israel is a small country, and they have the talent pool for engineers is very limited. It's so bad, right, in Israel that you could literally send 25 outreach messages to the same one candidate within a space of 1 year, and they will still not answer you. Maybe on the 26th outreach, 2 years or 3 years later, is when they will respond to you. That market, fantastic, amazing talents, but they're just really limited. So now imagine that you now finally, that candidate finally responds to you. They probably didn't get through, and then they're asking you for feedback. You just ghost them. You can't ghost them because you will need to think about how you would re-engage them again, maybe 2 years later, if you have need for their skills. Perhaps because we always think about it in this way in engineering. The skills you have this year would definitely not be the same as what you would have acquired in the next 2 years. We always think upskilling. That means that even if we didn't hire you this time, in the next 6 months, you may have upskilled and we will then be able to hire you. So the point is, ghosting is prevalent in regions where the talent pool is very expansive. But if you have a narrow talent pool you're working with within a geography with limited talent, that will not be the modus operandi. So again, I would still say ghosting is a choice. You can choose not to ghost, that is applying best practice, or you can choose to ghost. I mean, the onus is on you. But if we're constantly thinking about how we can improve our candidate experience, then you need to set the right guardrails around, ghosting so that that would not be the precedence for you as a professional and within your organization. And very quickly on what I think is Fumi, the last speaker who just spoke, where she spoke about interviewers. Sometimes if you tell them to send the rejection, they may come back after 2 days and say, oh, they want the candidate now, etc. A good approach would be, how about you try like a workshop session? So pretty much a debrief session for every hiring that you conduct for that hiring manager. I find debriefs very important because a hiring manager who has clearly said no before, when you go into that workshop session or that debrief session, they have like 2 candidates or 3 candidates to talk about. You hear what they have to say about that candidate. Some of the information that they will provide to you can be extremely biased. Sometimes you will hear them say all manner of things and you're wondering, is this important to the job that they're coming to do? So you, as a recruiter or somebody in the talent space, the onus is also on you to be a trusted advisor. You need to challenge some bias. You need to challenge some of the status quo that they will put in front of you about that candidate. So you ask them questions like, okay, they may not have been great here, but in terms of XYZ that the role is requiring, did they fit the bill? Did they express growth mindset in such a way that even if they didn't do too well here, they have the right attitude to learn? What's their learning velocity like? If they come here within the next 1 month or 2 months, will they be able to upskill? What do you think about this candidate? So you're forcing them to redesign their thinking around hiring and giving decisions on candidates. And I found that when I use this approach, a lot of times a candidate who had a hard no in the beginning, you start to hear them start to say, okay, this can be a soft yes. Okay, this can be a soft yes. And that's how you're able to, bend people's minds, not to bend their minds in such a way that you now attract bad candidates, but also for you to be able to spot bias when the hiring manager is speaking and just quickly nip it in the bud just to get the right candidates. Otherwise, they will send you on a wild goose chase. The same, you keep hearing a hiring manager say, no, 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 no. You are like a hamster on a hamster's wheel, never hiring for that role.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I can't see Mickey on the call because I think we wanted to speak earlier, but we have just 2 more rounds. We'll try and make it very quick. 2 things. First is on the recruiter himself, right? Ourselves. What are those things that we need to begin to do to become sharper as the landscape is changing? What things should we learn? Are there tools? It would be good to hear from our panelists if there are things that you're doing or certain acts, right, that you recently found that you believe would help a lot. I know that I think was it yesterday or maybe it was 2 days ago in the group that I put an adaptation from a recruiter from South Africa who was comparing a recruiter from Lagos and then a recruiter, on the globe, the experiences or the reality, right, or the differences in the two, and all of that. So that's one. I think the other thing I want us to talk about will be forgotten that enough thought, but we'll go on that. But based on this, let's have you chime in. Darlington, what are those things how should recruiters now begin to improve themselves? What are those things you think that we should begin to do? Or what are those acts you found either as a technical recruiter or a generalist recruiter in that sense? Let's hear from you. And then I'll come to Akon-te next.
Okay. Why did you decide to go with me first? Okay, so I would say continuous learning. I would like to emphasize on that, right? If you are going to compete on a global stage, then continuous learning should be part um of your goal, right? And we just need to learn to apply, globally, really. Um, Especially recruitment methodologies. For example, when you're sourcing, you need to understand how to use um Boolean search, some Boolean strings and all of that, interview processes, start interviews, Samuel, before he left, he mentioned something around behavioral interviews and competency-based frameworks and all of that, right? So these are things that we should actually, learn to use if you're going to compete globally, right? And some people would also, mention the need to earn certain certifications, the SHRM, the CIPDs, and so on, right? And this is just to match, international benchmarks and all of that. So I think continuous learning is very important. And I would also like to stress on, staying updated with global trends, especially now we've spoken quite a lot on AI sourcing, right? So if you understand how to use certain tech, certain tools, I think that would really help. Maybe some 2 3 years ago, interviewing candidates, I would be highly dependent on, like trying to get notes and all of those things. But right now we have note takers and all of that. But of course, this should be done carefully. You need to see candidates um candidates consent before you actually do any of this. So yeah, AI sourcing is really in vogue now. So it would be nice to actually try your hands on lots of tech. Diversity hiring. I think someone also spoke on diversity hiring. Very very important concept, and I think that it should also be emphasized as well. I would say data-driven recruitment, which is also very important. I have quite a lot to say on maybe this is not, maybe on the next one, but recruitment data hiring, it's a very important concept, right? And yeah, there are lots of tools now that could actually, help you um, compete globally. We have LinkedIn Recruiter, we have the Greenhouse, Workable, and a host of others, right? So when people say, for example, London-based recruiters or American-based recruiters are better than Nigerian-based recruiters, I think is just horse shit. I'm sorry for swearing, and the reason is the recruitment fundamentals are the same, right? Negotiation, understand the tools, stakeholder management. But they're all the same. It's just access is now different, right? In my opinion, anyway. And I think that we touched on quite a lot on the group the other day. And I always like to emphasize on having a global personal brand as well, right? Where you just position yourself as a specialist recruiter in a niche, right? So if you are um, solely focused on maybe hiring back-end engineers, you might want to also, put something that captures that on your LinkedIn bio or headline, however you want to do that. I have people, recruiter friends who, write stuff like, oh, recruiting around, recruiting blockchain talent or healthcare professionals or whatnot, right? So this sort of just, helps you. And if you want to share your startup stories success stories. Maybe you've worked in quite a lot of startups and you see yourself as someone who, who wants to actually just be in the startup space, having a headline like that, also helps you compete globally, right? Um, and lastly, I would like to also say that we have quite a lot of talent here in the country who have, like global experience, right? Lots of people have experience working with European, American organizations. So how is a recruiter in London, in America, better than what we have here, right? Because right now we have remote work, we have cross-border, placement and all of those things going on in recruitment right now, right? So yeah, this is my 2 cents on the matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Darlington. Akon-te, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, but I just need you to help me rephrase the question. I'm not sure I got the
Yeah.
question.
Okay. So I wanted to, so we're focusing now on ourselves, on the recruiter. How do we get better going into, September to December? What are those um, things that you think for us to be better and be well positioned? What are the learnings we should begin to take? Are there courses that you found out? Are there certain areas where we think we can improve? What are those things? And all of that. Just how the recruiter can be better in a world that is rapidly changing as far as TA is concerned.
Okay, I think it's not a lot really for me. But one key thing which you cannot run away from as a recruiter, regardless of what industry you play, is understanding of the business, right? The business that you're hiring for. How well can you market that company to your next best talents that you hope to hire? So had people, especially when you're hiring very senior guys, right? They want to understand what's the plan, what's the growth plan of the business? What stage are you at? Are you at the startup stage? You scale up, you established, and those type of things. So they want to see the vision of the business. Where's the business hoping to go to? I had to hire an exec recently, and I can tell you for free, that is the longest hiring I've ever had to do, right? The hiring started sometime in September, and this person joined only in June. That is how much, you can imagine how much time it took, to have to, was on calls back to back. Each time we had to speak was something else, right? Because this person wants to understand, and rightly so, because I don't want to join a business they don't know what they're doing. They don't have a plan as to where they want to get. You have a vision, okay, that's fine. You have a mission, fantastic. Then what is the execution plan of trying to get to that place? So that is something you have to know, your business, that of wherever it is you're working at, you have to understand. If you're in products, if you're a product-led company, if you're a service-led, whatever it is, you have to understand the nitty-gritty of what it is that you're doing to be able to, because you cannot sell what you don't understand. You have to understand the business, right? That's one thing that I haven't seen a lot in a lot of recruiters. They just feel like, okay, my job is just to put out the job adverts, get a few bunch of guys, run them through the process, hire. No, I think it goes beyond much more than that. And you want to give as much information as you can, just to kind of, give some level of, because again, so speaking about the debrief that Sophie was talking about, the debrief, yes, I would never send you to go see any exec in my company without having you tell me what you understand of the business, because they would ask you, right? So you, who is coming in, to a certain extent, I'm not saying you have to know everything, but you have to understand how would you play? What would be your role in trying to get us to where we want to get? So if you don't understand that, then you're not seeing any exec. That's my start. So I must give you as much information because I need you to also be able to convince the execs who will be interviewing you that you really understand that you're also trying to help us, achieve the mission, whilst we also help trying to achieve yours. So it's two ways, right? That's one. Then two would be to we talk a lot about courses. I know in this part of the world we like certifications and all that. That's totally fine. And I think to a large extent, every recruiter, I understand that there's this thing that happened recently on the recruiter software. CIPM said if you're not certified, you're a quack. And to a large extent, I think I kind of agree to a large extent, but maybe not. It doesn't have to be CIPM, right? It could be any other certification, but just to put yourself at the level where you feel like, okay, you've attained the rights or the status that qualifies you to be able to even operate in that space, right? So certification is very key, I think, in my opinion, at least in this part of the world. So it gives you some credibility, there's this thing that it adds to your profile, this juice it adds when you put it on LinkedIn and there's something after your name or something, just on your profile, you have something that states that you're qualified to be able to practice this particular profession. So I think certification could be SHRM, it could be CIPM, whatever, CIPD, whatever it is, but just make sure that at least you have that credibility to a large extent, because this is some of the things that candidates who you're trying to reach out to would look at. Okay, who is this guy who is trying to, especially when you're hiring outside of your jurisdiction, who's this person? How well do you understand? How far have you been playing? How long? They look at these things. You may not know, but sometimes when they ghost you, it's because as a result, they've not seen what is going to even make you credible enough to even respond to your chat. It's not because they don't want to, but they just don't find you maybe qualified in their own terms, whatever it is they're looking at to engage you, for whatever it is. And your brand as recruiters, we're even we are at the forefront of our brand, the organization that we work for, the brand. Marketing guys are responsible for that, but to a large extent, because we do most of the reaching out, I think we portray the business that we work for, and you have to have that, that presence, brand presence, online presence, to be able to engage certain type of talents, especially the ones who are passive, who are not looking. So to a large extent, you need to have that credibility around it. And one of those things that can help boost your credibility is the certification that you hold. So that's also one thing that I feel recruiters have to take very, seriously. And maybe finally, we should also try to networking. We cannot overemphasize this. My next hire might just be somebody who knows. Sessions like this are very important because it helps us exchange notes and see what it is that we're lacking and where we can actually develop and become better. We have these conversations I see in the chats a lot of opinions, very valid opinions, and that also helps me even learn and see, okay, these guys are doing something differently. What can I incorporate in my own process to be able to make it better, this type of thing. So networking is also one thing that I feel we just have to do a lot more deliberately. I know the world now is mostly online. I haven't met Tolu in years, but again, we are connecting every day. So networking is very key. And I think it's something that recruiters have to do very lot of. So those will be my points on that question, Tolu. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sophie, quickly, your thoughts. What are those things? How should recruiters improve, and what are those things you think we need to begin to learn?
Yeah, so I'll make this very quick. I would say we need a strong mindset shift in the sense that we need to operate from an ownership perspective. We need to first understand that as recruiters or as talent experts, we are not a support function. We are not supporting anybody. We are offering a service. So you don't go to your hiring managers and act like, oh, I'm just supporting them. Because when you act in that fashion, they tend to toss you around. What am I saying in essence? Number one, understand that, it's important that I have so many thoughts coming to my head now. I'm just trying to condense it. Okay, number one, get this mindset of I'm not working as a silo. I'm co-designing a talent system. Now, when you're co-designing a talent system, you and all of your stakeholders are very much involved. Everybody has their role to play in such a way that you, as a recruiter, you do not have to nudge every of your stakeholders through that process, because everybody understands what they are meant to do at what time and at what given period. Now, what's the best way to do this? When you get a rec and you were supposed to run with hiring, do you just go on and say, oh, I understand the job description, I'm just going to run? No. You need to sit down with your hiring team or your hiring manager's team and build out a kickoff call. I know some of us do this, and some of us think that all we need to do in the kickoff call is to just align on what the job description says and where we want to hire, how many roles do we want to hire for, how many headcounts are we closing for. But that's not just all. You need to sit down and design your hiring plan on that call with the hiring team. Now, something that I do, I would share my screen, and then on that call, we start to align on what the hiring plan looks like. I'm telling you, within the first 2 weeks, I'm going to be very heavy on sourcing. After these first 2 weeks, I'm going to provide maybe 4 or 5 candidates who I have interviewed, and this is just an example. So I'm giving them very specific, like detailed, granular specifics of what is going to happen. After the next 3 weeks, Mr. Ajayi is going to have the first interview on so dates 4th and 5th, and we will lock it down. Are you going to be available on these dates? And we'll say yes, they will lock it down. I will go and if you have a recruiting operations person who would help you with your calendar invites, tell them they lock it down ahead of time. So, in other words, every single step of the process is properly articulated in that hiring plan. Everybody knows what they are meant to do. Recruiter knows what he or she is meant to do. The interviewers know what they're meant to do, at what dates and at what times. It's all locked down. So, in other words, we are running like a sprint. We're treating recruitment like a project sprint. Because the truth is, in engineering, product managers and product teams, they run product sprints all the time. They want to build a particular system. They say this one was supposed to launch it. The back-end engineer, the front-end engineer, the UI, UX person, they all know what their functions are. So why can't we treat recruitment like that? As much as the product manager would, go and oversee what's going on and how the building is going, but everybody knows what they're meant to do. The product manager is not constantly nudging and nudging and nudging. So why can't we do recruitment that way? And I've found that personally, that works for me. When I get into that call, I'm detailing the hiring plan. And I'm not saying that this only should be done by senior leaders in TA. No, even if you have 1 year experience, the truth is, if the person who is a GMD or who is a senior leader could run the recruiting process end to end, then you will not be in that function. They could as well come and do your job. So whatever level of experience you have in TA, so long as you hold that position, you are the subject matter expert and you will treat it as such. In other words, you will bring your people together, even if they're the CEOs, of course, respectfully, align on the hiring plan, set out the timelines on how this would go, and then everybody moves in one understanding. And then, of course, because you're the recruiter, you are the one overseeing the entire recruiting process. You would have touch points with them. This is where we are at. If you have an interview scheduled for the next 2 or 3 weeks, you have to constantly remind them, week 1, week 2, I hope you're ready. We have this interview in the next 1 week on this date, on this time. And I believe that once we have that mindset that we don't work in silos, we have to work collaboratively. We are designing a talent system, we're designing a talent project, and we treat it as an actual recruiting sprint or a recruiting project. You'll find that quite a number of things that drop through the cracks, they will start to get mended. And even you will gain a strong level of respect from your hiring team because they will no longer treat you as, oh, just that recruiter that is supporting us. They now see you as a partner in achieving their set objectives. They'll see you as a builder of their teams because the truth is, if you do not do your work, they won't have team members to work on the jobs. And of course, the company is going to suffer at the end of the day because who is going to take on those roles to actualize the company's growth trajectory? So when you start to see yourself as an actual partner, you're a talent designer, talent system builder, a lot of these things will start to change. And I think finally, as recruiters, we also need to be a bit bolder in our approach. Be bold, don't shy away. If you see something is not right, there's a high level of bias, please speak about it. Speak to it respectfully. Of course, you can also come with data. I find that this one works very quickly. This one works. Sometimes I would say, oh, this is how XYZ competition is doing this, and this is the results that they have gotten. I think it would be great if we tow in this direction. Sometimes senior leaders don't like to hear that a company who is the competition is doing way better than them. And not just that you're speaking narrative, of course, but you're showing data to them. It sometimes helps to steer the course of the direction very, very quickly.
Thank you so much. I know we should have a hard stop by 11. Just one thing, 30 seconds each, everybody. We're in September. Obviously, I think the month that people japa in Nigeria, and you probably will start losing talents in some sense, or your talents will begin to move. Between now and December, what do you see going on? What are your expectations in terms of hiring? 30 seconds. Let's go first with Sophie. 30 seconds.
You're putting me on the spot now. I don't know. I just think, I mean, just like what I just said, people just taking an inner look at what their systems have been, how they've done work in the past couple of months and quarters, and then what they can do better, just positioning themselves better for the new year, for Q1 or 2026. The way we're doing things before, we can't, if it hasn't been great, we can't continue that way. We need to up our game.
All right, thank you. Darlington, your thoughts, September to December, what do you see? 30 seconds. You're muted. 30 seconds. 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 30 All right.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So I'm not really sure how to answer that, but I think that I'm just really I'm hopeful. Obviously we've seen quite a lot of improvement, we've spoken quite a lot on candidate experiences, and employer, value propositions right now and all of that. So I just really hope for the best. And I know that while AI is in vogue right now, but we've also seen a number of employees getting back to their jobs, and I see quite a lot of things, a lot of good things actually. I think the outlook is really beautiful, and I'm hoping for the best.
All right. Thank you. Akon-te, last but not the least, what do you see September to December? I hope you're there, Akon-te. Okay, I think Akon-te is off his mic at the moment. All right, I want to give a special shout out to Sophie, to Darlington, Akon-te, Samuel, and Chioma who were on the call. Shout out to everyone that has also contributed. Dalton, Miki, Fumilayo, Yimika. Shout out to you guys. Thank you for joining the call. I'm sure this has been very, what would I say now? Interesting and very insightful. The truth is that when we come on this call, we sort of hear from different parts and sort of exchange notes. It gives us the impetus to see areas where we can improve, and then we'll come back the next time and see how things might have changed. On to the next time. When we come, perhaps maybe in November or December, I think maybe in December, we'll just find a time to have the last one for the year, and then do predictions towards 2026. So I'm sure we'll still retain our panel members, or we might add to the panel members so that come 2026, come next session, next edition, we'll talk about 2026 and the things that we'll see. Until next time, really so appreciative. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and bye for now. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you,
Have a great
Darlington. Thank
weekend,
you,
everyone.
Akon-te, Samuel. Have a good weekend.